Hi, I'm Matt Hernandez, and this is Book Chat with You. In this podcast and every episode, I do my best to try to make an opportunity for us to chat together. Now, in this constantly changing world, and maybe I'm a bit behind on the curve of all this, but I think it's very important that we still try to seek some human connection together. So I'm not just trying to make a podcast where I'm talking at you, but with you, and for us to try to discuss things together. Now, today we're still looking at the short story collection, Carol Shields Collected Stories. It'll take a while to get through this, but maybe it's best for me to finish about one book or one series at a time. So today we're looking at the short story Flitting Behavior. Now, in this short story, we have three characters. The main character, Meershank, a successful author in Canada, a Chicago Jew who now lives in Canada, or I would say with his wife. That's how the book describes him, is Chicago Jew. And then there's his wife Louise, who is terminally ill, and they do not state what the illness is. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe somebody else can read into this and kind of see what it is in case I'd missed it. And then his editor, Maybell. So the story starts off with a bit of a narrative about like one day, and his wife is terribly ill. She asks him, "Are you lonely?" His editor comes over. He serves his wife food on her bed, and she says that she's too ill to get up or whatever. But then he goes back down. I forget what brand or what type of alcohol his editor's drinking. The whole thing seems a little inappropriate. The narration style is a bit difficult because it sort of keeps mentioning a line here or there about how something going on relates to one of his books, relates to something he had written elsewhere. And his editor is always able to easily recall these different things. She's always able to recall these different things at ease. But it seems at first that that's not the case with his wife. His wife is able to recall these different things. His wife has played a crucial part. But his editor, she seems to adore his writing. And there's an emotional affair here. And then the story kind of tells us about how they kind of got together. I mean, Lois and Meershank, the author, and his wife. And then from there, when the author had to go out to town because he lives kind of out of town, at one point he actually full on cheats on his wife with the editor. And there's so much to talk about with all this stuff. And I do believe it leaves so much to condemn about Meershank. And it does leave us. There's this final section in this short story where there's four characters, and one of them's a judge. I think we are supposed to be the judge. And I cannot lay out the nuance of this. I cannot emphasize enough just how much I condemn all of this. But I could imagine, and I cannot say how many times I condemn, but I can imagine a little bit now at my age and whatnot, like it would be tough to be lonely and like this, like Meershank. But at the same time, the emotional affair has gone on for a long time, and I do not believe that he gives his wife the proper respect due. And all of that is also quite unfair. How unfair is all of it? But we get enough here. And he does seem to be quite insulting in a variety of ways. So I do think that this story, more than many others, I mean, I don't know how many of any of my prior episodes you guys have listened to, but one of them was on Dr. John Deloney's short book, Reclaiming Anxiety, I believe was the title. And it's like we, as I listen to his show, we can see how circumstances, it's not always easy. It's not easy for people. And these actions of cheating and stuff should always be condemned. But they should always be condemned. But I don't know. Maybe with that said, I should go and read here. I'm going to read here on this book from the bottom of page 76, but I'm only going to show pages 77 and 78 here on the screen. And I'll show it. I'll give a bit of commentary on it. I'll say some of the things that we can discuss because this story gives a lot to discuss, really. And yeah. There is a character, Virgie Allgood, in Meershank's book Sailing to Saskatchewan, who might be said to resemble Lois. In the book, Virgie is an eater of whole grains and leafy vegetables. Uh, Martyr-like, she eschews French fries, donuts, liver dumplings, and yet her body's a host to disease after disease. Fortified milk fails, and just when the life is about to go out of her, the final chapter, a new doctor rides into town on a motorbike and saves her by prescribing a diet of martinis and cheesecakes. There is something of Lois too in the mother in Meershank's tour de force. Continuous purring. She is a woman who cannot understand the simplest joke. Riddles on cereal boxes have to be laboriously explained. Puns strike her as being untidy scraps to be swept up in a dustpan. She thinks a double entendre is a potent new drink. She is congenitally immune to metaphor, the root of all comedy, Meershank believes. And on the day her husband is appointed to the peevish chair of mid-brow humor, she sends for the upholsterer. When Encounter did a full-length profile on Meershank in 1981, it erred by stating that Lois Lavelle Meershank had never read her husband's books. The truth is, not only had she read them, but before the birth of the word processor, she had typed them, collated the pages, corrected their virulent misspelling, redistributed semicolons and commas with the aplomb of a goddess, and tactfully weeded out at least half of Meershank's compulsive exclamation points. She corresponded with publishers, arranged for foreign rights, dealt with book clubs and with autograph seekers, and she always less and less frequently, of course, trimmed her husband's fluffy wreath of hair with a pair of silver-handled scissors. Now, I'll admit here that when I was kind of first reading the story, and I read it over and over and over again, I misread this the same way that the person who did the profile on Meershank for Encounter misheard that Lois Lavelle Meershank did not read her husband's stuff. And I should maybe be embarrassed by saying that, but I think Carol Shields, if like myself, I guess my reading comprehension should be higher. And I sort of made that mistake in a sense because he's just insulting her and insulting her. I don't know how much every author should put himself into his own writing and that kind of thing. But to the extent that he does here, he's really insulting her. And if this is always his style of doing things, people know this in different writing, reading, publishing circles. So somebody misheard her whenever she said it, whenever she made her statement. And I think the whole thing is quite insulting. So where is this lack of connection with his wife to go and seek an emotional affair? Not that anybody should seek an emotional affair, but where does this come from? It just seems like maybe her husband, Meershank, he just wants somebody who's just constantly agreeing with him. And that's very cruel, we should all respect our spouses regardless if they just agree with us in every kind of way. I'm not telling anybody here what to think. I want a discussion with you, and we can all share our views, and there's plenty to discuss here. But in my opinion, we don't need some, AI generated something, for instance, that we begin to model as a person what we would want, and they keep pushing that back towards us. Okay, let me continue for a bit. She read Meershank's manuscripts with a delicious to Meershank frown on her wide pale brow. More and more she'd grown to resemble her mother. She turned over the pages with a delicate hand, and though they possessed the same scholarly sheen as her father's official history of the Canadian Navy, she read them not once but several times, catching a kind of overflow of observance that leaked like oil and vinegar from the edges of Meershank's copious verbal many-leafed salads. Her responses never marched in the same time with his. She was slower and could wave aside sentimentality, saying, "Why not? It's part of the human personality." Occasionally she said the unexpected thing, as when she described her husband's novella fiend at the water fountain as being cool and straight up and down as a tulip, which she actually told the journalist from Encounter was that she never laughed when reading her husband's books. For this, Meershank had always respected her, valued her, adored her. She was his Canadian rose, his furry imbiber of scented tea, his smiling plum, his bread and jam, little squirrel, his girly girl, his dear heart who promised in the garden by the river beside the limestone house in 1949 to stay at his side forever and ever. What a joke she has played on him in the end. She, as Meershank said to Maybell, taken a turn for the worse. Her phone, he phoned the doctor, who said he would come at once. Then he handed Maybell a piece of paper on which 2 telephone numbers were written. Please, he said, phone the children. Maybell was unprepared for this, and she had never met the children. What could I tell them? She asked. Tell them, Meershank said, and paused. Tell them it could be sooner than later. One of the daughters, Sonia, lived in London, Ontario. She was the new director of the program for women's studies. For those who trouble to look, her mirror image can be found in Ira Chauvin post-doc research in male studies and Meershank's academic farce, 10 minutes to tenure. Sonia did not say to Maybell, who is this calling, or how long does she have? She said, I'll be there in 3 hours flat. Yeah, I find a lot of this a little odd, right? Meershank, the author, asks his editor to call his daughters. It's all a little strange, right? Where are his priorities? Where is his emotions? Where's his strength as a man or father, whoever, to call them himself? It's all a little strange. How long has this emotional affair been going on? And we hear about the first time that he actually cheats on his wife, and how long was that going on? And there'd be a lot to discuss here. But with that said, I think that's about as long as I can go. So, have a wonderful day. See ya.